Hey everyone, my name is Eric Jones, better known as a turf teacher. Welcome to the course entitled Specifications and Contracts. The North Carolina Landscape Contractors Licensing Board has given it course number 1618. This course is also approved by the North Carolina Irrigation Contractors Licensing Board. So if you do need a proof of attendance for this course, please send me an email to ejones@turfteacher.com, or you can download the proof of attendance from the website. So let's go ahead and get started with our course objectives or learning objectives.
And guys, our objectives, we're going to talk about required contract elements. What is it that makes a contract legal and binding? Well, there's got to be some elements to make that happen. What are contract provisions? What happens if there's a breach of contract? We're going to talk a little bit about boilerplate provisions. We're going to talk about some provisions that will limit risk. We're going to discuss recitals, what they are. We're going to discuss the types of construction contracts. And guys, that's kind of an interesting thing. That's kind of a little forte of mine. I love learning about the design build, the construction management side, the lump sum bid. I mean, all of that. That kind of really, I don't know, just interests me a lot, because you're starting to see some of these design professionals offer the construction management services as well. And let's take that for instance. What if you're working on a large commercial site, and this could even happen in a residential setting as well. You're bidding on a larger project. So I'm talking, $100,000 poolscape for a residential client, or this could be a much larger project on a commercial job site. With this, the landscape architect, they design the project, and then they will help the owners submit the plans out for bid. A lot of the landscape architects already have a group of landscape contractors that they're working with, so they've kind of certified them, as you'd like to say. But they help the owners collect the bids and go over them and help them select which contractor is right for that job. Well, also the landscape architect, and maybe not just a landscape architect, but even a building architect or project engineer, will help the owner throughout the installation and build process of the project, making sure that their design is built 100% to the way they wanted it, and built to the way that client actually wants it, I should say. And so they're offering those construction management services, and you as a landscape contractor can offer construction management services, or you can do the design build. And we'll talk more about that when we get to those slides, but I really love that discussion. And these are contracting methods, because that's kind of the type of the construction contract. And then what are some sources of contracts? And then what about the construction activities on the plans and the specs? And as you know, I love those specifications. And unfortunately, as a landscape contractor, the GC sometimes will hold that information back. I don't know, I guess they are doing it on purpose. Why is it that we always have to ask to see the specifications? Because there's kind of some hidden things that we may need to do in those specifications that we're not going to see on the plan. And we'll talk more about that when we get to that slide. We're going to talk about making changes to a contract, change orders, addendum, whatever it is. If the contract's been submitted and accepted, it's going to be a change order. And that's kind of a way where we can make a little extra money on a project, maybe or maybe not. That's ethical. But, we sometimes get we can get hurt sometimes in some of these contracts. And especially if you don't get specifications. So if you don't get a copy of the specifications and you leave something out, just wait for a change order, guys. And I've even heard contractors say that that's where they make their money, is on change orders. That is their profit. And so it's kind of sad, but it's the reality of doing commercial landscape installations. What about resolving claims, alternative dispute resolutions, making substitutions? A lot of times, the designer or the owner is going to make a substitution. They may change their mind, so it's going to be something very similar to what's on the plans and in the specs. And what about contract documents and then a project manual? You need to make sure you've got that copy. And are oral agreements legally binding? I would never do a new job or work for a new customer without it being written. And if you listen to my radio show this morning, I know it's early January, and you know that you might be listening to this lecture 2 years down the road, or you're listening to it for the current year to get your landscape contractor CEUs. But we talked about contracts this morning and how one of our hosts on the radio show got really hurt in the contract. You know, yeah, he's lost some money, but what he did, he gave the owner quite a bit of extra. And so she was kind of expecting that at the end. And when he said no, she was ready to take him to court. So it's all about having everything in writing. And guys, it needs to be in a language that your homeowners can understand. What about legal interpretation and then subcontracting? Whew, that's when it can get a little hectic and a little crazy. And one thing I want to have in my contract with subcontractors is the payment schedule. Because a lot of these subcontractors, guys, they have to get paid every Friday. We've built houses. We've been in that type of construction too. My brother's still in it, running Cavalier Custom Homes. I did it for a time. I want no part of it. Yes, we have our GC license for things that could help us out in the landscape world, and we just have it for kind of, you know, just to have it. It's one more page on the resume, you know what I'm saying, or license in the portfolio. But when it comes to this, hiring subcontractors, you got to have that payment schedule. You got to say, hey guys, you need to submit your pay application by such and such date to get paid on such and such date. If not, they're going to be knocking on the front door because they're going to find out where you live, guys. And it happened to me several times. Guys would find out where I lived. That's the good thing about Google, right? And then knock on the door. Hey, Eric, we started that job yesterday or this morning, and it's Friday. Is there any way we can get half of it down? So-and-so ain't paid us on this other job, and you know we're trying to get to the beach this weekend. So is there any way we can get that paid? Can we go ahead and get half of it down? If not, I mean, what about all of it? I mean, I've heard it, guys, and I'm sure you have too. So you got to make sure those contracts are legit and spelled out clearly for your subcontractors and for yourself as well, because there may be times that the pay application for you, submit the pay application by the 30th of the next month to be paid by the 15th of the following month. Well, think of that, do that math. It could be 2.5 months sometimes before you get paid. And then they're going to take out retainage. All right, but specifications. They provide information necessary to ensure that the project is built exactly as the owner desires. And that's where that construction management kind of comes into play. The landscape architect or the engineers, maybe not so much the engineers, but definitely architects and landscape architects are going to provide that service to follow the whole construction process all the way through. They may even be a part of the pay application. The owner may call the landscape architect out there and say, hey, is this much work been completed? They've requested a draw. Let's get you to go out and inspect it. So you want to make sure that you know your payout dates and what is in the specification, because that's where you're going to find that information. And so, guys, the specs can hurt you. There's been horror stories. I have a friend that bid on an apartment complex down in Charlotte. In the specifications, it says also submit with your bid, and it be all inclusive. This was a one price bid to submit, providing the maintenance for the property for 1 year, and that maintenance included another mulching and the fertility apps and the mowing and leaf removal. I mean, yeah, it's going to not be that many leaves, but there was some wooded property next door to it, but actually on the apartment site itself, you know, young trees, they're not producing enough, but they had to send a crew down there every week for 52 weeks because that's what the specifications called for. They only bid the job based on the plan. Another horror story was a friend of mine planted a bunch of trees in Raleigh in a park, and the landscape architect specified removing the wire baskets all the way, not just folding them down or cutting them back. We had a big discussion in last week's seminar about removing wire baskets or not. And that's a whole nother topic, so we won't get involved with that. But if it's in the specification, guys, you kind of got to do it, or at least get in front of the owner and explain why you would not take them off. But they didn't read the specifications. The landscape architect showed up in a truck, had shovels and rakes in the back of his truck, got out, pulled back the mulch. I mean, they were still on the job site doing kind of cleaning and stuff. And they're like, what are you doing here? Well, I'm the landscape architect. I'm making sure that the wire baskets were removed. And they're like, oh my goodness. Guess what they had to do? Boom, pop them up and pull those wire baskets off and replant them. So guys, that was a nightmare story. Look at the extra time and the extra money spent. Not alone that probably half of those trees ended up dying because of that. So, you know, if that was in the specifications, I read it, I'm all about leaving the wire baskets off. Yes, removing, you know, folding them back, removing the nylon strap and all that. But definitely removing the wire down to about half the basket so those roots can go out laterally. And so I know there's science proven that it's okay to do that. And then there's specifications or technical writing saying that you need to remove it. And so guys, again, whole nother topic, but just read the specs. And if you don't agree to it, at least talk to the owner, talk to the landscape architect, or pass on the job. It's okay to do that. You don't have to do every job that comes along, right? In the specifications, there are going to be general conditions. These are going to be non-technical aspects of the work, like the bidding information, and it's going to give you a sample contract that they're going to use when you bid on the job. Now, this bidding information may also require that you attend a pre-conference bid meeting, and if that's the case, go to it. Well, it's required. You're not going to be able to bid on the job if you don't show up, and it may also say that you need to submit a bid bond. You know, you're having to bring money to the table, stating that if you get the job, you will do it. Well, if you decide, like, man, I was the low bid on this job. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Well, you've submitted a bid bond, or you've brought money to the table. They may require a payment. And what that payment does, if you decide not to do the work after you've been awarded the job, they can take that extra money and get the next guy in line. So gets crazy and gets a little spooky sometimes when we're talking about lawyers and things like that on these larger projects. General conditions, again, they're going to have the forms used during construction, you know, example of an addendum, change order, things of that nature. It's going to talk about the rules and responsibilities of all parties. You know, so this kind of helps you too. It's kind of protecting you as the landscape contractor. We're going to talk about some clauses and then the supplemental conditions that will go along with the general conditions. But all of that is going to be in your general conditions. Now, I do still have my book open as I'm going along. Supplemental conditions, you know, I'm just sitting here reading right from the textbook. They will modify the general conditions of the contract that are often prepared in a separate document. Supplemental conditions are tailored specifically to each project. They may outline items such as specific insurance requirements, project procedures, and local law requirements. So a lot of information there regarding that. Specific insurance that you may have to have. You may only carry $1 million worth of general liability. They may require $2 million, or, you know, things of that nature. So you got to read it and make sure that you're able to provide that to the owners. Technical specs. Now, this is our work. This is what we do. It's going to describe the methods and materials and performance of the project components. And really, this kind of helps us do apples for apples. I love it when a landscape architect specifies everything. We will use this. We will use Rainbird. We will use Hunter. We will use Technoblock. We will use this brick paver. You know, they're specifying exactly what to use. It's apples for apples. Usually non-landscape trades specifying products and installation will also be in the text. So, you know, they may have underneath the electrical guys, they may have, you need to use cast lighting. And so you need to check each one of those specifications. And everything is grouped by the trade. So we need to look for site work. We need to look for landscape. We need to look if there's an erosion section. We need to look for the electrical and definitely the plumbing if we're doing the irrigation as well. So get a copy of these specs and read them. You're going to have somebody on staff that's probably in your estimating system or estimating office. You know, hopefully you've got that system in place that can read these things and pinpoint things that is going to affect you on the construction site. Material and workmanship specifications, detail materials and construction procedures. The designer will choose the materials. Like I said, I love that. It's apples for apples. Can begin with warranties, material delivery, and reference standards. And then the second part indicates which materials to use. The description can be closed specs, which means no substitutions, and I love that. Like I said, we're going to use all Hunter products on the job. We're going to use Schedule 40 piping. We're not going to have the choice of PRS 200 or anything else. Everything is laid out to spec for us, and that allows us to bid properly. Because guys, what if it was open specs? This means the contractor can choose from a list equal to or closer. I've actually seen it. A landscape contractor to supply irrigation system to the project. And yes, you're going to have to hire a licensed irrigation contractor, or if you have your irrigation license, you can do it. But if they're not specifying what to use and you're set up to use Rainbird or Hunter or Toro, the three leading irrigation companies out there, products, and then you go to somebody that buys their stuff at the big box store, the lesser value, a lot cheaper. They're buying a $50 clock instead of a $300 clock. You get my drift? Apples to apples is what we want to bid on. And if it's an open specification like that or open specs, it's these guys are going to bring some junk to the table. I mean, they really are. That's why I love the closed specs. The landscape architect has spec'd everything out. Last part describes detailed installation methods to be used. How are we going to build that job? All right, specifications. They prescribe the result of what a component of construction must attain. It must look and perform as the designer intended. And you're probably like, Eric, yes, but some of these designers don't know what they're talking about. And guys, that's okay. It's okay to question them. It's okay to say, hey, I'm a licensed landscape contractor. I've been in business 30 years. I know for a fact that this plant right here will not grow in full sun. Why did you specify that, Mr. or Miss Landscape Architect or Mr. or Mrs. Landscape Designer? Can you please tell me why? We'll put it there, but I'm going to put a clause in my contract to you that this plant will not work in this sun, in full sun. Therefore, we're not going to warranty it. It's okay to question it, and it's okay to educate your client on it. You need to have some of these group discussions. A lot of times, maybe on these larger projects, you may not get a chance to talk to the owner, but you can at least talk to the site super, the GC, or the landscape architect. You need to bring these things to light, guys. Addenda is a change in the plans or specifications before the bids. So when you do bid on it, they're probably going to submit addendum with you, so you can look at that from the original specifications and plans. Change order is once you've been awarded the contract and the owner wants to make a change, and there you can get some of your money back. Like I said, whether it's ethical or not, I've heard contractors say that's the only time that they actually make money is on the change orders. And so switching out a plant might be very expensive for some of these owners out there. All right, construction drawings. You got plans. They provide a graphic tool to you and to the owner, because a lot of times the owner doesn't really understand it, but the graphic tool is going to help them. It's also going to provide the location of the job, the actual grade of the property, if there's a grading plan with it and they've had to change the topo, and then any improvements done to the property. Well, a lot of times we're landscaping a new building or a new home, so those are the improvements that are on there, and our landscape installation is an improvement, whether it be the plant material, the hardscapes, the pool, the irrigation system. All of that is an improvement to the property, and they are going to be on the plans. However, I have seen where the landscape architect says landscape contractor to provide irrigation system upon installation. Well, you're not going to do it after installation, you're going to do it beforehand. So you're going to give them a price on the irrigation system, because there's a lot of landscape architects that don't understand irrigation. They can't draw a plan. And so it's left up to us, the installers, to do that. So I'm sure a lot of you guys already have your irrigation license, so you're doing both. We have both, and we do both. If we get the landscape job and there's an irrigation on it, we're going to bid on that. I mean, there's maybe twice in my career we didn't have both, because you had to bid on them separately. And, somebody came in a little bit cheaper on the irrigation system, but we got the landscape job. And it may even happen vice versa. So I don't know. But most of the time, we're doing both the landscape and the irrigation. And so it's easy to do it. Scale, Architect scale is measured in fractional divisions. The engineer is in multiples of 10. And guys, this is, it's kind of crazy. At the college, a lot of times, my students are introduced to scales right off the bat in HOR 114 landscape construction, because we're measuring jobs, we're bidding jobs, and we're doing all that in our construction class. The scale is one of the hardest things for them to read. Guys, I have students come right out of high school, they can't read a tape measure. It's unbelievable. It happens, but we've just got to work with it. That's change, as they say. But architect, fractional divisions, engineers, multiples of 10. Your surveyors and stuff are going to use the engineer scale. Landscape architects are going to use both. Building architects, pretty much everything is in an architect scale because they're actually drawing floor plans and things of that nature. But you need to learn how to read both. And then use dimension lines over the scales. If you're looking at a landscape installation plan that's got dimension lines on it, use that versus the architect or engineer scale that it's specifying in the legend. You would want to use the dimension lines. Types of drawings, there's the plan view, which is length and width, two-dimensional, bird's eye view, you're looking across of it. Cross section is a vertical cut through, and that's going to show height, length, or width. And then we have an elevation. It's a vertical surface height with length or width. And so kind of very similar drawings there. I love drawing them. They I think they're good like on a streetscape if you're doing that to show the relevance of the height of the tree compared to the buildings if you're responsible for designing like a streetscape or something like that. So funny thing is, everything's gone, electronic. It's still fun to draw these plans by hand, guys, especially hand coloring or rendering the plans. But, a lot of people are using, AutoCAD, Revit. Revit is a big thing that landscape architects are using now. It's kind of like a 3D walkthrough. It's pretty cool. That is the, what do you say? The kind of the new wave. We talked about it last year in the classes if you were in it. Oh my goodness. And I'm ashamed to say that I forgot. Virtual reality, the virtual reality of landscaping. So guys, it's pretty darn cool. All right, line types on the plans. The darker lines are going to be your structures or your improvements, and the lighter lines would be those dimensions. All right, and so like I said, a lot of people are doing them in CAD. I love Pro Landscape. I love Dynascape software. Dynascape's got a really nice tool where you can actually trace a property line and house and actually create the site plan that way. Like if you were to take a picture of the plot plan that's in the construction job site box, it makes it real easy to do it. CAD can be printed out as a PDF or emailed as a PDF, so anybody can open it and zoom in on it. It's really cool to do that. And then shop drawings, they represent the contractor's or supplier's interpretation of the designer's requirements from construction documents. And so let's say the job has a nice big gazebo, big commercial property that's got a large gazebo, that can sit several people underneath it, and there's like a steel beam going across it to hold it up. The architect has designed it by looks, but they need to get it engineered, that steel beam. And so these drawings would be sent off by the landscape contractor, the one that's putting it up or building it, or the GC, and they would actually get this spec'd, and then it would be approved by the designer. So you've got to have those shop drawings on certain things. Not everything that we do, but every once in a while we'll have to. As-built drawings, guys, we've got to do that on our irrigation systems. So, even if there is an irrigation plan, but like I said, I've seen it multiple times on the landscape design plan, landscape contractor responsible for irrigation plan. So that's when we do an as-built, and that's required by law in North Carolina to do an as-built or record drawing for your homeowners or your building owners, so that they know where all the heads are, where the lines run, where the controller is. Everything needs to be on that plan. And it's simply taking that landscape design plan or planting plan and actually drawing it. And you can draw it in different colors, main line, red for being hot, having water in it all the time, and then blue for your lateral lines, or vice versa. We'd have to go back and look at the specifications from the irrigation board before we did that. But you need to know the difference between the main and the lateral lines, and then mark the location of each head, and definitely the location of each valve. Like I said, yeah, the original marked up, good enough there. Site preparation or site demolition plan. There may be some things, guys, that we need to do as the landscape contractor. You know, maybe they're asking us to take down the old willow oak tree that's right in the middle of the property of where the building was going. That's why we need to read our specs. Site layout, that's when they're going to do the construction staking. Grid format, dimensions referred to from 2 baselines. And then a baseline is a single reference line. And we do a lot of that at school, you know, pulling string lines and measuring off of a wall, off of a sidewalk. It's pretty cool. And then object dimensioning is distance off a nearby object. And this is good things to know if you're going to do a small residential landscape design for like a backyard or front yard. Those are my favorite projects, guys. You're in and you're out. You're doing a landscape renovation. It's good money. You're done. Customer's happy. You've got some pictures to put on a portfolio, and boom, there you go. All right, grading plans. Now, probably one of the hardest things to draw, one of the hardest things to do in the School of Landscape Architecture. You know, we spent a whole semester grading plans, and it was still hard to do. It's one of the hardest things, I think, on the old LARE, Landscape Architect Registration Examination. So back in the day, yes, we actually had to do a grading plan. Now it's all digital, multiple choice, where you're kind of placing objects and actually grabbing a contour line and moving it around the house. It's a lot different than back in the old days. But grading plans is a benchmark set elevation that serves as a reference point for all existing and proposed grades for the site, permanent location, and accessibility. But grading plans, if you're good at grading plans, you're going to be busy. You know, if you're good at it, you're going to work for a landscape architect, or you've got a bachelor's of landscape architecture degree, you're going to be doing that if you're good at it. They're going to stick you over there on that CAD station and say, do it, because most LAs don't like doing it. And I apologize if you keep hearing my computer. It's like it's resetting itself. I think I've got email open in the back, so that's what we're hearing. So my apologies. I just don't want to stop the video for that and to go. It's actually on a computer over there, and I've got the speakers turned up real loud. But construction drawings, we have contour lines on these grading plans. The dashed lines are existing, and then the solid is the proposed. So when you look at a topo map and you've got these dashed lines going through the building, the architects place the building on the land, and they may have the landscape architect or civil engineer do the grading plan. And so we're actually taking those contour lines and moving around it. So the solid lines are the proposed ones for the site. And then there's going to be the spot elevations, and then there's the finished floor elevation. And you know, that concerns us when we're trying to make sure that the water is flowing away from the building, and we don't want any water flowing back to our new structures based on something that we've done, like with the berm or trees, or even mulch. You know, water's a big thing, and you don't want to have to go back and fix that. There's utility plans. You know, where are the utilities? Where are they located? How are they coming into the house or the building? More or less probably the building. And then the planting plans, what we're really concerned with. And then there's the plant schedule or plant list. Now, guys, there has been some issues where I know from friends where they've only counted the plants that are in the plant list. So they look over there and they see, you know, 10 Lagestromia indicas, 30 dwarf Burefords, 50 Indian hawthorns. Back in the day, nobody's using Indian hawthorns anymore, but they just took the numbers right off the plant list, the schedule, and they didn't go back and count. Guys, I take a highlighter, and if it says 10 crepe myrtles, I'm going to highlight each one that I count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Highlight. Ooh, 11. There's an extra LI or Lagestromia indica on the plan that's not listed in the plant schedule. Oops. You got to go back to the nursery and get one, don't you? Because the plans is what you got to go by, not the numbers in the schedule over there. They had a typo. They didn't count one themselves, so you got to do it. And then construction details, like if you're going to build arbor or pergola or anything like that for the homeowner or commercial place, you've got to understand how to read those construction details. Contracts, they are legally binding agreements between two or more parties. So there's one of your elements. It's got to have two or more parties. You can't go into contract with yourself, right? You got to have two or more parties. They will define the obligations of the agreement, outline the payment terms. Hey guys, when are we going to get paid? And if you're hiring a subcontractor, you're going to have to tell them they're going to have to wait to go to Myrtle Beach next month, not on your dime this month. And then limit the liability of the parties involved. That's scary. Limit the liability. Well, everything's kind of geared to protect the consumer, right? Well, maybe so, but we've got to protect ourselves as well. And that's why we got to make sure we read those contracts for one, and then include any provisions that we may want in them. The contract elements. You have reached an agreement to do work for a customer. They've hired you. Mr. and Miss Smith has called. You are ready to work. But that does not mean you have a contract. There are 4 key elements that must be in effect to make the contract binding. An offer and acceptance. Hey, we will do this job for you for $15,000. Mr. and Miss say, okay, we accept that. Consideration, they're going to pay you, right? When you going to get paid? And then competent parties. Well, did you come to find out that Mr. and Miss Smith both had Alzheimer's? They didn't know what they were doing. And come to find out, you know, all of their finances is being handled by their children because they are kind of coming down with dementia or whatever. Not a good thing, is it? And then what is the legal purpose? You know, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it? How are we going to do it? What is our purpose? So offer and acceptance. An offer specifically outlines the obligations of the contract, including the work to be done and the compensation for this work. You're going to do the job. You're going to do that back redo of their landscape around their pool, $15,000. Negotiation is the process where the owner and contract come to an agreement on the price and terms. Acceptance is agreeing to the offer made, and generally is done by signing the offer. So you're going to give them an estimate. And I don't like them signing the estimate. I mean, yes, go ahead and get it signed, big deal, but you still got to have the contract. You know, this will be done first, this will be done, blah, 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 and do it. And usually, you know, and you're working for residential customers, you're going to be the one writing the contract. I doubt the homeowner is going to do it, you know, unless they go to Office Depot or something and buy one of those pre-printed ones and write in the names and stuff. But you need to be the one writing the contract for your customers. Now, if you're working for a larger GC or building contractor, you're going to be signing their contracts. And I know that for a fact, and I hear some of these young guys, man, I don't sign anybody's contract, they sign mine. Well, they're not working for commercial general contractors. They're not. That's a whole different ballgame there. Yes, there's money to be made, and yes, you need to read those contracts and probably have your attorney look at it, but they're not going to sign yours. You're going to sign theirs. Your offer should contain certain components because if accepted, you're contractually bound to it. You offer checklists should look like this. The date of the offer, well, it's on your quote, names and contact information of the contracting parties, name and location of the project, and description of the work to be performed. You know, you got to have that scope of work to be performed. What is it that you're going to do? Well, we are going to remove all existing plant material. We are going to redesign and install plants around the pool in the backyard at 123 Main Street, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. All of it. All the way down to who's going to clean it up, when it's going to be completed, when do you expect the job to be completed. Now, while we talked on the radio show this morning, the Weekend Review, Darren, good friend of mine at Turfs Up Radio, one that got me involved in the station. He did a design build for a lady where he lives, and he kind of gave her a little extra things on the way. Like, you know, the first mistake he made, he says, you know, we will provide 1 pallet of sod to do touch up around it. So what they were going to do was in Florida, it's kind of ideal to resurface some pavers, like stain them. And they were going to have to do some digging around the edges and stuff like that. So he included a sod. Well, the lady thought that meant sodding the entire front yard. So he gave her that. Well, she thought she was going to get a path around the backyard. So he did some paver stones or large stepping stones with mulch around it. She didn't like that. She wanted pea gravel around it. So he did that. I mean, this was a pretty huge project. It was like $35,000. So he said, I'll do it. Well, next thing you know, they stained her pavers. She didn't like the color that she picked out. And needless to say, she's wanting him to pay to get them restained again, but they're going to have to sandblast the tops to get that stain off and then go back with another color. And he's like, no. So she's going to sue him. And it's a whole different law in Florida than it is up here. But the fact is, he's like, man, I should have had all this lined out. Again, I've been in business 30-some years, and he said, I just left it out. You kind of trusted these people, but those are the ones you got to watch out for, guys. Lord have mercy. The contract time or start and completion date, already mentioned that. The payment terms, when are you going to get paid, including progress, payment schedule, and the final payment, and then conditions for scheduled delays. Guys, what if it rains for 2 weeks when you sign this contract and they're expecting it to get done in 3 weeks? You got 3 weeks of work to get done because you told them you could start next week, but then it rains for 2 weeks. You couldn't do the job. You got to have those conditions in there. Contract documents with general conditions, the drawings and specs, contract sum, and expiration date of an offer. Now, again, you're going to have to design, like, let's talk about that pool in the backyard again. You're going to probably have to come up and draw it. You need to let them see it. That's a design build contract. Let them see what it's going to look like. And if you got somebody on staff that can do the Revit, the 3D walkthrough, even with Dynascape software, gosh, what a good selling tool that is. You need to let them see it, and they need to approve that design. Can't go in there and just throw stuff in. Consideration, both parties must give up something of value to have consideration. Competent parties, the parties in the agreement should have the legal capacity to enter the contract. And then a legal purpose. Contracts must be possible to perform, not intended to harm anyone and not require any illegal activity. They must be possible. I mean, sometimes, guys, they might be asking you something that can't be done. It has to have that legal purpose. Contract should be clear and concise. Key contract provisions, the contract price and payment terms, obligation of the parties, supplemental conditions, and a breach of contract. What's going to happen if the owner decides not to pay you? What's going to happen? You don't want that to happen, but it does. I mean, any other type of breach could be when the party refuses to perform the contract. What if you went into contract with a subcontractor to do the irrigation and they decided not to? Anybody performs an act that is prohibited by the contract or prevents the other party from performing its obligations. That's a breach of contract. What if your plumber was supposed to have the backflow set by such and such date, and they're like, no, I can't get it. It's going to be another 4 weeks before I can get back out there. That's a breach of contract because you can't do the irrigation system. You can't hook up to it without the backflow being in place. What will happen if there is a breach of contract? Payment terms should be very specific, include who is issuing the payment, the amount of the payment, form of the payment, and when the payment will be issued. So if you're doing a 4-week job, maybe you're going to get paid, halfway through. There's going to be a down payment, then there's going to be a progress payment made 2 weeks into the job, and then final payment at the end of the next 2 weeks. Who will pay it? If it will be a direct deposit into your account, if it'll be a certified check, if it's going to come from the bank, if it's a construction loan that they've got, the bank's going to have to come out and inspect it. And they're probably going to ask the landscape architect, is the work completed? And then they're going to come out. So guys, this might take 2 or 3 days to get paid. So you gotta plan for your payment, which is kind of crazy, but I mean, it's the way it is. Payment terms should be, okay, we just talked about that. I didn't click it. Progress payments, partial payments made after specified phases of construction are complete, halfway through, right? Requirements for the scheduled progress payment should be clearly outlined in the construction contract and should include the number of payments, the amount of each payment, the state of progress between the payments, and the date or stage when each one is due. So like I said, you got a month-long project. They're giving you a down payment to get started, and then in 2 weeks, you're going to get another third of the total sum, because they give you a third down. Then you get 2 weeks, another third, and then when you complete it, there is another third given to you. And it may state what paperwork you need to submit, how you're going to get paid. This is probably one of the most important parts of the contract, guys, because you can't be expected to be paid when you ask for it. You're going to have to go through the necessary paperwork to get your hard-earned dollar. And so if you're not ready to finance a project right yet, you may not want to go into commercial landscape contracting right yet. Retainage used by the owner to ensure completion of the construction project and provide protection against liens, claims, and default. And so, yeah, when you get that first progress payment, they're probably going to hold 10% back. So let's say you've got that $30,000 job that you're doing. They give you $10,000 up front, and then they're going to make a progress payment to you in 2 weeks. They're going to hold 10% of the $10,000 and at the final payment, and then they'll probably have a walkthrough and then release it all back to you. Now, they also may ask you to sign a lien waiver before they pay you. I had a guy in the last Saturday seminar says, I don't sign lien waivers. I ain't doing it. Well, we've always had to sign them. You sign the lien waiver so you can get paid. That releases all rights to the property. Yes, it does. But again, you've got to have that trust with the builder. They're doing what they've got to do, because they can't get paid unless they sign lien waivers themselves as well. So a lot of times these big builders, they're operating on a small margin, and so they are living off the draws and actually able or having to pay from that draw. They don't have the necessary financing to front all of this construction. Then final payment generally due when all punch list items are complete as agreed between the owner and contractor, and proper approvals are obtained and all paperwork is complete. More paperwork, yes, always. And then final payment documentation should be prepared to deliver to the owner upon completion. Completion certificates issued by the architect, inspection certificates, and even guarantees and warranties. Sometimes you may not get final payment until 1 year after, because you gotta guarantee the plant material for 1 year, or at least one growing season. Provisions, affidavits that all subcontractors and project bills have been paid. It's kind of hard, guys, because a lot of you have 30 days to pay your suppliers. So you go and get the stuff. You've got to sign all these lien waivers and affidavits that you've paid them before you can get paid. Equipment operation manuals, final lien waivers for those who had submitted preliminary notices, and the final project drawings. You may have to submit that record drawing or as-built for the irrigation system before you can get that final payment. And then any other documents as required by the contract. Now, we've actually had to take lien waivers ourselves to our suppliers and have them sign it, saying that they have been paid. And guess what? They required us to pay them before they would do it. It's kind of, as the contractor, as the landscape contractor, we're kind of stuck in the middle sometimes there. Everybody else is getting paid but us. And unfortunately, when it comes to the progress of a construction site, we're the last ones on site. Therefore, we're going to be the last ones to get paid. I wish we had as much authority as the concrete company that delivers the concrete, because they are the first ones that can put a lien on a property. Contractor obligations, having the proper license. You guys are licensed landscape contractors. You got to secure any permits for it. You're definitely going to have to pull a permit if you're doing an irrigation job, and some municipalities will require a landscape or zoning permit be pulled. Ordering all materials and supplies and arranging for site delivery. That's a nightmare in itself. Finding a place to store it, making sure that it's secured, making sure that it can get watered if it's plant material, and then furnishing all work in compliance with all applicable codes and scheduling inspections on a timely basis. Now, yes, that's crazy. We used to travel all over the Southeast doing O'Reilly Auto Parts, and we'd be required to call in the inspections. Well, guys, we're on site for like 3 days maximum. We could do an entire project, full installation of irrigation, plant material, mulch, the whole 9 yards. Usually, and there were some jobs we get done in a day and a half. It just depended on the size of it, and it depended on the amount of sod that we had to put on the property. If there was a retention pond and everything, all that had to be sodded. And it took us a little bit longer. But complete all work according to the plans and specs, keeping the construction site clean and removing all debris during upon completion of construction. And unfortunately, they think landscape contractors are the ones that's going to clean up the paint buckets and everything else. Again, it all goes back to us being the last ones on the property. Owner's obligation ensuring prompt approval of all plans and specs. Yes, they've got to get this done in a timely manner. They must ensure the project meets the zoning requirements or specs. You know, you can't build a project, and we'll use the example, what if it's zoned residential? Well, they can't put the commercial thing on there. What if you're going in to dig and pour footings? You know, the owner has to make sure all this is right. It's not up to you. And then issuing payments according to the specified progress payment schedule. So they're the ones kind of outlining when they're going to pay you. They got to pay you when they say they're going to pay you. Paying for all required permits, assessments, and charges required by public agencies and utilities. Unfortunately, that's not always the case because you're going to have to purchase the landscape permit if that needs to be, and even the irrigation permit when they have to set the backflow and the second meter. Furnishing all surveys and recording plats and a legal description of the property, and then providing access to the construction site in a timely manner. However, those specifications may say that the landscape contractor is to provide silt fencing around the entire property and install tree protection fencing and install riprap at the construction site driveway. That's why you need to read those specs, guys, because sometimes that is the landscape contractor's responsibility. They kind of sneak it in there and get you to do it free. Breach of contract. A breach may occur when a party refuses to perform the contract, performs the act prohibited by the contract, and prevents the other party from performing its obligation. I kind of jumped the gun a while ago and jumped in on this a little bit right from the chapter. A material breach is a serious violation of the contract with liquidated or stated damages. And then immaterial or partial breach is a less serious violation that does not usually result in termination of the contract. They'll kind of slap you on the hand and say, just do your job. All right, boilerplate. The term boilerplate refers to standard language or clauses used in legal contract. Usually appears at the end of the contract, and the purpose is to protect the business in the event of a lawsuit. Again, protecting themselves. And it's really going to be miscellaneous clauses. So you need to make sure you read those and make sure that they pertain to you and the job site at hand. Allocating risk. A force majeure addresses acts of God and other external events such as war or labor strikes. Wow. Hopefully we don't have to deal with any of that, but I could see like acts of God. You know, you install a landscape and a tornado comes through, destroys the building, destroys the landscape, all of it. Identification dissolves the identified party from any payment for losses and damages incurred by a third party. And then differing site conditions, allocation responsibility for extra costs due to unexpected site conditions. Now, a lot of this is already going to be figured out before you get there as the landscape contractor. We had an issue one time in the Meadowlands golf course where we dug a basement and was getting ready to, have it prepared for footers and everything else. Well, guess what happened? We had an underground stream. There was literally an underground stream going right underneath the house. Well, the developer ended up being responsible for that. There was a lot across the street that had a big old hill on it. We were able to take that dirt. They paid us to go in there and build a pad up for it, so the house wasn't on the basement. But that yard still stays wet. But they don't have any water in the crawl space. They don't have any water at all. So with all the waterproofing and the piping around it, but there is an area in that yard that stays wet because there is an underground spring underneath it. And so that was a differing site condition that the developer was responsible for because they sold a lot that was ready to be built on. Warranties and guarantees defines the contractor's responsibility for the repair of defects to the construction project after the completion of work. Delays and extensions of time provides contingency in case the completion deadline is not met. And sometimes if you don't meet that deadline, you might be having to pay some fines. Schedule acceleration provides assignment of cost incurred to complete a project ahead of schedule. Maybe you'll get some extra money. You know, that, hey, we need to get this job done. We got to move on to the next one. You got to get here. You got to get here. All right. Well, you need to get paid for that. Artistic changes clause addresses changes made by the architect or design professional during the project or artistic or creative purposes. Maybe switching out plant material. They don't like that tree. Ooh, that tree blooms pink. I wanted it to be white. You know, things of that nature. So what are recitals? Recitals are language at the beginning of a contract that provide background to the contract. The parties entering the contract contents, and the reasons the parties are entering a contract. Hey, we want a new poolscape around our new pool that we just did. That's why we're entering a contract. Types of contracts. Lump sum. The contractor agrees to complete the project for a predetermined specified price. The unit price contract may be used for jobs where the extent of the work cannot be fully determined. And then the cost plus contract. The contractor is reimbursed for the actual cost of labor and materials and is paid a markup fee for overhead and profit. You see a lot of home builders doing that now. It is a cost plus contract because the homeowners are changing their mind so many times they can't actually give that lump sum price or they would lose the money. And that actually helps the homeowner make a quick decision like, whoa, well, this is cost plus. That's going to be an additional $5,000 to switch countertops now. So it kind of keeps it where it was at because they don't want to spend the money. Contracting method, single prime. Most of the time, that's what a lot of these, what the true term general contracting is. They sub out everything and they are the single prime contractor. We did do the student union at UNCG where there was multiple prime contracts. There was the prime contract for the GC that did the building. Then there was a prime contract for the HVAC contractor and the electrical contractor, just because the amounts were so big that the state wanted them divided out into multiple prime contracts. Then there's design build, where you may have an architect on staff that you are doing the design and the build of the project. Then there's the construction management. You're paid a flat fee to manage a project. Turnkey, you know, that's again all one price. Here it is. Here's the keys at the end. Fast track construction, get it done quick. And then partnering up. You may partner up with another builder who is really good with concrete, and you guys are really good with steel framing, and so you kind of partner to do a particular job. Sources of contracts. In situation where the form of the contract is not written by you, it is important to read the contract very carefully, highlight anything that is vaguely worded for further clarification, and then make any necessary additions. In situations where, again, not written by you, review the changes with the other party. Make sure any requested changes have been added prior to signing, and then review the contract again prior to signing. Change order, a written agreement between the owner and the contractor to change the contract. Common reasons for this change order: change in scope, unforeseen conditions with site conditions differ from the expected, and then errors or omissions in construction plans or specifications. The claims resolution process provides a way for the owner and contractor to resolve disputes without additional amounts owed as a result of contract changes. Claims procedure, the contract may stipulate specific procedures for handling claims, and then the project schedule. The project cannot be delayed during the claims resolution process. Dispute resolution, negotiation, mediation, you know, you're going to talk about it. Mediation, you're going to kind of have somebody come in and mediate it. Collaborative law or arbitration, probably not what you want to do. What is it saying about that? Let's check that out. Oh, shoot. Well. Oh, collaborative law is a facilitated process wherein all parties agree that the onset to work is to identify a solution that is beneficial to all parties involved. So you're kind of sitting down, and again, kind of more of negotiation. The parties use their advocates, most often their lawyers, to facilitate a mutually beneficial result through the process of negotiation. There is no neutral mediator or arbitrator involved, and the parties are expected to reach a settlement without further methods of ADR or litigation. So arbitration would use that third party in that step. So making substitutions, the substitution approval process occurs during the bid stage only. Hey, you guys are speccing out Rainbird, but I am a Hunter person. I can get better deals with Hunter. Can we do that? See if they'll accept it. Substitution after the bid process must meet certain criteria to even be considered. What if they're discontinued products? You specified something that we can't get hold of. The only event that will not require a change order. I mean, it's no longer available. We can't find it. And then what about substitution specs? The item must be equal to that which is specified. Project manual is a central location for bid documents, contract provisions, technical specs, and addendum. This bound manual is a useful tool easily referenced on the job site. So it's going to be in the job site trailer. It can be reproduced and distributed to contractors, subcontractors, and suppliers. And there may be a website, guys, where you can actually log in and get this. And it's probably handled by some of your ReproTech or some of the plan producing people that will print off the plans and the project manual. They may have like a website that you can log into. I remember there used to be online Dodge rooms, and then there'd be online plan rooms and stuff like that where you could see this information. And if it's housed by a neutral party, you can't have this sneaky GC go in and change this stuff. But it's going to contain invitation to bid, bid instructions, bid forms, supplements, and the addendum. Contract provisions, the form of agreement, general conditions or obligations of the parties, the supplemental conditions, the change orders, and an index of drawings. It's going to have your required bonds. Well, you're bonded already. Your certificate of insurance. Those are going to be your supplemental forms. Your tech specs, organized by a classification system, or usually organized by each trade. And then the construction documents. They're going to have your architectural, structural, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, landscape, and civil. Like I said, you need to look at plumbing, electrical, landscape, and civil always. And then under most circumstances, oral agreements are just as binding as written agreements with a few exceptions. Oral agreements are not a good way to do business. Get it in writing. Guys, the only time you're going to do this if you've worked for the homeowner for 30 years and you've just got that respect. Hey, Eric, we want you to do this. Just go ahead and do it. You've been with us 30 years. We trust you. Do us right. Okay? You know, you've got that. You just got that bond with them. So it's okay to do it then. Legal interpretation. Clarity of language and meaning is one of the most important aspects of interpreting contracts and avoiding a dispute. It is strongly recommended that you use an attorney when drafting contracts to ensure that the contract will stand up in a dispute. And guys, they can probably get you a generic one pretty good that you can change, like, hey, where the project's at, the amount, and stuff like that. But if you've got certain things that you have to have in your contract, just pay your attorney to do it. Spend the money and protect yourself down the road. I know a landscape contractor, guys, that's got an attorney on staff to make sure all their contracts are written correctly. That's pretty cool. Subcontractors should include similar content as the owner contractor contract, such as date, names, and contract information of the parties, name and location of the project, description of the work to be performed, and then subcontract type or start and completion date. You got to have that start date. Well, I think I'm just going to have to wait till next week, Eric, because I think we're going to head down to Myrtle Beach. You give me half up front, and the wife says we need a vacation. We'll see you next week. Heck no. I don't know what it is about a lot of these subcontractors. They think they the general contractor. Hey man, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the business owner. Drives me crazy at times. But make sure you know the payment terms, including progress payment schedule and final payment. My brother's, he's building a house right now, and it's like, hey, Mr. Jones, can we get paid? Conditions for scheduled delays, drawings and specs, contract sum, any general and supplemental conditions that apply, and the signatures from both parties.
Okay, now the Landscape Contractors Board wants us to go over the minimum standards, and we're going to start with 21 NCAC 28B- or .0501 general. Prior to commencing work, services performed by a landscape contractor, licensed contractor, that exceed $5,000 in value shall be described in a written agreement. This agreement may be authored by either party and shall contain the following. So guys, just remember, our license limitation's different than what it is for us to have a written agreement or a signed contract. Look at the size jobs that we can do and the size jobs that an unlicensed professional can do. The limitation, what, $30,000? Kind of up there, right? But if we do any type of work for a customer that exceeds $5,000, we must have it in a written agreement. Now, that means whether we're going to do, QuickBooks or we're going to do any type of software program that's out there, we've got to get the client to sign that written agreement, that written estimate, that written contract. And they shall contain the business name, your license number, your business address, and the telephone number of yourself, the name and address of the client or customer, the address or location of work to be performed if different than the client's or customer's address, the date of the proposal, the description of the work to be performed. Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? All of that must be written in the written agreement. And then the total value in lump sum, unit price, or time and material price. However you are, bidding the job or, awarded the job and submitting the contract to the client. Are you doing total lump sum? Most of us probably do total lump sum. Very seldom do we, break it out unless it is a huge, huge job. And we just say, hey, this is very complicated. We're just going to do time and material price. Here's what my labor rate per hour is. And we will submit estimates or invoices based on the material that we do use. The estimated time of completion, unless already identified in an original prime contract, if applicable. So you're going to be telling them when we are going to finish the job. The terms of payment. I think this is probably the most important thing that we need to consider when we are, contracting with somebody. When are we going to get paid? Are we going to get a percentage up front? Are we going to get half of it halfway through? Or, are we going to get our last 2/3 at the very end? However you set your payments up, it needs to be listed in this written agreement. The terms of warranty, if any, typically we're going to, warranty our plants one growing season. The terms of maintenance, including the party responsible for maintenance. What if you lay sod? What if you plant a bunch of plant materials and there's no irrigation there? The client didn't want to pay for irrigation. Maybe they live in a municipality that doesn't require irrigation. Who's responsible for that? Well, it shouldn't be you unless you're allowed to be in control of the irrigation system and actually install one, or if one is already there. The signatures of all parties by individuals legally authorized to act on behalf of the parties. You need those signatures. And then affixation of a seal described in GS 89D-12D, or a statement that the licensed contractor is licensed by the board and the current address and phone number of the board. Guys, you should have your stamp. You should get one. North Carolina licensed landscape contractor with your name on it and your license number. That needs to be on every piece of paper that goes out there. Every estimate, every letter that I send out to a customer has got my contractor seal. I've got the actual stamp. I've got it in black and I've got it in red. And I've also got it in a digital PNG format, which is transparent, which means I can, insert it into QuickBooks. I can insert it to our Jobber software. I can insert it into a Word document. And it's transparent. So it's not going to have that white background. It is 100% transparent, and I can impose it on any type of drawing, any type of PDF, any type of Word document that we have here. It needs to have that seal to it, and the date of signing. And then B, all work performed by a licensed contractor shall meet all applicable building codes, local ordinances, and project specifications. All work performed by a licensed contractor shall meet manufacturer's specifications. Now, guys, we are bound by that. We are a licensed professional, so we have to, abide by the rules and regulations. We have to check with the municipalities what it is that we need to do for that job. We may have to check restrictive covenants. We may have to check HOA rules and regs. All of that needs to be complied with. C, if project plans or specifications prepared by someone other than the licensed contractor do not meet codes and ordinances, it is our responsibility as the licensed contractor to bring this to the attention of the client or customer. Hey, Mr. and Ms. Smith, this right here, it's not holding up. This is not to code. You need to reach out to your designer, or your landscape architect, or your developer. So you don't want to be caught doing something wrong, because it is up to you. You hold that license. You are responsible for doing work that is within the building code. D, if the licensed contractor observes a condition while the work is being performed that requires attention beyond the original scope of work, the contractor shall report the condition to a supervisor, the owner, or the person responsible for authorizing the work. And then E, the licensed contractor shall call for utility location services pursuant to the Underground Utility Safety and Damage Prevention Act, General Statutes 87-115, ETSEQ, also known as North Carolina 811 law. You must call 811 if you're going to be any type of digging, and you don't want to cut that. It's okay once in a while, maybe a cable line, you can get that splice, ain't gonna cost you too much. But what if this is a retirement center, or what if this is a person that had to have a nurse call line into their house? A lot of that can be some serious mucho dinero that you're going to have to pay out if you cut it. And then F, the licensed contractor shall maintain a work site that meets state and local standards for a safe workplace. You need to be able to do that, ladies and gentlemen, because it can get very, very expensive. And so anyway, guys, that does conclude specifications and contracts for your 1 hour of credit for your North Carolina landscape contractors license renewal for July 31st of 2024. So this course is also good for one irrigation credit. So if you need a proof of attendance for your irrigation license, please send me an email or download it from the website there. Guys, I appreciate it. This is Turf Teacher, and I will see you in the next lecture.